Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Craig Brann, and I am doing your message today. The preparation before this was just so fantastic. The music was great. The meditation was so nice. The reading was so cool. And, I'm going to talk about no self. And since I'm not here, I'm not going to really talk about anything at all. Thank you very much. Shortest talk ever, right? Well, from Maurice's meditation, it kind of made me think about, I was a little bit worried about this idea of no self is a really tricky thing, and it's easy to say it wrong and hard to say it right. It's from Buddhism, but her meditation kind of made me feel about, don't worry so much about it, and I want to suggest to you that, the words are very intellectual and splitting hairs and things like that, but also hear them with spaciousness around them. Like the words are like a river that's coming out. The things that I prepared for and I read a lot and I really enjoyed studying it. And I'm not going to be saying exactly what I wrote down, and it's just all coming out of the moment still, out of the void, and like a river. And if I were to speak about it tomorrow, it would be different then as well. So you might experience that way, like I was in the Smokies recently, and the rivers were so gorgeous, and it was lovely to sit there and experience them. And words aren't quite as beautiful as a river. Well, some words are. Anyways, I just thought I'd briefly say when I started Buddhism, my first attraction was back when I was in my 20s, and I was looking for, ultimate truth. And when I came across Buddhism, it was really appealing to me because the Buddha says, be a lamp unto yourself and do your own self-inquiry into the insights that I give you. So I like that there was not going to be, here is the truth, and, you can use these kind of intellectual, scaffolding, and just believe it and know it. That it takes some work on your part and takes some effort and some self-examination. The other part that I really thought was cool was, I always thought, well, how can there be an ultimate truth when there's just so many things that work together? How could I make the right decisions in the world when everything's so interconnected and there's all these moving parts and, you're never going to know all of these things and get it right. So Buddha taught about, codependent arising and the interconnectedness of things. And I found that also very appealing. So I studied Buddhism for a while, and I'm not like a serious daily Buddhist. But when I hit no self, the idea of no self is really troubling for me, because I'm like, well, I don't really exist, or I'm not going to exist later. That's kind of scary to think that, I will just disappear into nothingness. So looking at this again and reading a lot about it, it's still a little bit scary for me, and I can't say, that I understand it completely, but I will share with you my understanding of it and some of the things I've read of no self. So in Buddhism, it's called anatta, is the kind of the official, I think it's a Sanskrit word, which is one of the original languages of the time of the Buddha. So I wanted to give just some examples, some things you might be relate to as we step into this idea of no self. One of the things that the Buddha talks about is the impermanence of things, and that's a really easy concept, right? You might think about, as we heard earlier, about the clouds in the sky. They're beautiful to watch. You might just hang out and watch them for a while, but they're constantly moving and changing, and they become rain, or they become rainbows. And all of those are beautiful things that are interacting with the environment of nature. The flutter of a butterfly. While I was reading some things and writing things down on my patio, I just saw a butterfly, and everything stopped for me. It's like the dog going, squirrel. But for me, it was like a butterfly, like, oh, the butterfly is so beautiful. And I stopped, and there was no me in that moment. There was no me going, I see a butterfly, and that's so beautiful. There wasn't even the saying of that's so beautiful. There was just the experience of butterfly and no experience of me. And, just that moment of like brightness, right? Of I'm there, I am there, but I'm not there at the same moment. So, one of the cool things I came across in some of the readings was this guy was saying, here, a moon reflected in the pond is devoid of any independent identity. There's moon in the water on a clear full moon night. It's rippling, dancing, doing somersaults in a pond, in a teacup, in a dewdrop. But the moon doesn't always stay in that water, right? It's like a mirage. It's there, it's not there. Well, causes and conditions. So we look at things outside of ourselves. Easy to see causes and conditions. My wife is complaining about the sap on her car. We had gone to visit her sister up in Bay City. They have this tree in the driveway. We park under the tree, and it always drops sap on the car. So how does that happen? Well, it's not just we parked under the tree, and so it happened. But, somebody planted that tree there. And the sunlight and the water helped grow that tree. And the heat of the day, that particular day, made the sap even softer to drop. And, we drove in and we decided to park in that spot. There were other spots to park in. Why did we decide to park there? It was convenient. We knew sap was going to fall on the car, but we forgot. We're old, all these, we kind of forgot about all that till after the weekend was over. So, all these different complex things that come together to create this moment of sap on the car. Darn it, right? Dissatisfaction. That's a reaction, right? So, anyways, the thing about it, though, it's not permanent, right? She was able to wash the car, get it off. It's kind of nice. But it could happen again under different conditions. It could still happen. So, signs of change, signs of impermanence is one of the big insights of the Buddha that he really wanted to impress upon people. This is a really important thing to notice and pay attention to. Things that happen more quickly, easier to see the change. But how about a pencil on a table? It's just sitting there. You could watch it for weeks, and it wouldn't seem to change. But, over a period of 100 years or 1,000 years, if we could watch it that whole time, or, want to have those fast cameras that'll just show time really quickly, right? It begins to deteriorate, or the dust just, gets deeper on it, right? And it begins to fall apart. And what is the pencil made of? It didn't just appear out of nowhere, right? It's been made out of a tree. The graphite maybe comes from, a mine in Sri Lanka. The paint on it, has got some resins in it that are natural in nature. And all of these things come together to create the pencil. And then the pencil, when it disappears, it doesn't go back just to those things exactly, right? Paint's not going to become that resin again exactly because it's become something else. But it does move on, and it doesn't stay pencil forever, right? It becomes other substances. So is the pencil an everlasting thing that continues on? Not really. Is it independent? Is it completely independent from other things? Well, not really. It has these parts that it's made of, and it becomes parts again. So what about ourselves? What about our very being? I mean, we know some things about ourselves. We've changed over time. We've grown. We've gotten taller. Eventually, we've gotten grayer, some of us, right? And we've become more mature emotionally. We've become more discerning intellectually. And, we've learned to experience things in bigger ways. Our consciousness has grown. Our awareness has grown. All of those things have changed over time. So when we make a decision now about how to deal with the relationship, it's going to be completely different than how we might have made the same decision when we were 20 under the same circumstances. Except the circumstances aren't the same, right? We're 20. All of those other variables are there, what a 20-year-old does, what me as a 20-year-old does. So that self when I was 20 is not the same self that I am now, right? It's a moving target. It's not one thing. And that's kind of what the Buddha was trying to impress on people. So even like memory is kind of a trickster. What I thought I was 20 was that really what I was when I was 20? Am I remembering that right? So the Buddha came up with these 5 aspects of what it is to be human. And they are form, feelings, sensations, perceptions, and mental fabrications. And one of the things I thought was kind of profound about the Buddha's teaching was that he saw the mind and thoughts as another sense, rather than something different than like our 5 senses of seeing and smelling and tasting and touching. What's the other one? Hearing, thank you. Right? That even the mind is another sense. It's something we perceive. It's something that creates, that has, that has some substance, and we're aware of it in the way that we're aware of hearing something. So I thought that was quite profound. And it's something that changes over time. Just like the things that we hear change, are constantly changing. So what is this self that's not permanent? What is this self that actually is not self? Well, the Buddha was thinking about self. The self that he's talking about is the self that over which we feel that we think we have control over it, and that we have control over all these aspects of our thinking. We have control of our thinking. We're in control of our emotional self. We're in control of, where we're looking. I looked there. I looked over here. But what did I see? I'm not in control of what was over there, right? And there's all these other things that are conditioning and causing what I see and what I think. So his first mark of existence was that, let me see, I missed it, was that things are impermanent. His second mark of existence is that we have no permanent self. That this, just like the pencil is made up of all these things, we are also made up of all these things that change over time. And there's no one thing that we can really call self. Now we do it, we identify, recreate these boundaries. I am this, I am that, I'm a musician. I play guitar. And, I like to study philosophy. And, sometimes I'm really emotionally immature, make terrible jokes, But that's me. That's just who I am. That I'm all these things. But that's also changed, I used to not make jokes. I used to be like really serious and half depressed and wasn't joking around at all. And that's who I was. I was depressed. I am depressed and I am deep about life, and life sucks because I can't find meaning, right? That was who I was at one point, right? And I was that for a while. but now I'm not like that anymore. So who am I, right? But we use the word I, and the Buddha doesn't say, oh, we shouldn't say I. That's kind of a convention that human beings have. It's not even something that we're taught. It is something that is natural to being human. It's not like this thing I have to blame society taught me that I'm an I. It's not society's fault or anything. It's just a kind of a natural human convention, part of being human. But there's something beyond that we can begin to realize. So there's a sutra called The Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. And in that sutra, he teaches form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Form is no other than emptiness, and emptiness is no other than form. So he has this idea of form as somethingness, as suchness, and emptiness as the thing that surrounds it. So like when the potter makes a pot, he starts in the center of kind of creating space, creating emptiness around the sides of the pot. So he churns the circle, puts his thumbs in and creates that emptiness and creates the pot at the same time. Emptiness and form. My words are nothing without the space between them. They're nothing without, the context of the definition of the word and the context that word is not. It is not something, right? So the same thing with ourselves. So let's see where I want to go with this. So, I was talking about like my flash of looking at the butterfly, a beautiful distraction of moments. Does self like suddenly quit the J job? I'm just going to stare at butterflies all day and be enlightened. But, that's not it exactly. It's not like about, meditating all the time and just being in a certain space of, doing nothing and just recognizing that existence is wonderful. You still have to have an I in the world. So this is kind of the middle ground of it. The Buddhists like to talk about middle ground. There is a self and there is not a self. In an essential way, there is no eternal self. But in a practical way, yes, I have a body for now. I have a mind. I have things I own. I have things I'm responsible for. And I still have to take care of those things. But I should do them in a way that I'm not getting so attached to what I'm doing. That I'm doing it in such a personal way. That's where like the neuroses comes up, right? I'm this. I gotta be that. You're attacking who I think I am, and so I'm reacting to that, right? Or I love this so much that I worry about it being taken away. I worry about, losing my wife or having my guitar stolen. These things scare me because they're mine. But if I'm less personal about that, I can still love those things without being so fearful about them, right? And then I don't have to be so reactionary. So that's kind of one of the takeaways, and the other thing I really get from this no self idea is that, I'm making choices, but I can't take all the factors in of the world and make some kind of omnipotent, perfect decision about stuff. So I can forgive myself a little bit more when I don't do things right. And I can rest in not knowing. I think that's another really big takeaway. And that's a big thing with Buddhism. It's not sitting there trying to get enlightened. I'm going to go after this. I'm going to try and understand not self. I'm going to sit here and reflect on it till I get it. It's actually, okay, I've thought about not self a little bit, and now I'm going to sit here in the non-knowing. Like, I don't actually understand this not self thing. And Buddha said, it's not something you just get intellectually. You sit and you examine. You examine these things that are, part of yourself. You examine your consciousness. Oh, it is changing. I'm getting sleepy. I can't focus. I'm looking at my body. Oh man, my knee hurts. It didn't used to hurt when I was meditating, and it hurts, and now it's going away because I'm more relaxed. All of these changing phenomena. And so you can sort of begin to intuitively infer the truth of these things on your own. And I can't even say I'm there yet very much. Sometimes I feel like I get it, and sometimes I don't. But when I meditate regularly, I do have a little bit more space around the neurosis of my mind. And I think it's helpful to do the experiential part of this and rest in not knowing what it's going to be like to get up here in front of you, and some of you are sleeping, and some of you are like looking down, and some of you are shaking your head and nodding, and are kind of encouraging and seeing that you're relating to what I'm saying, like all of that, right? It's not in control. It wouldn't matter what I said. Some of you are still going to do that, right? You're sleepy, or you're spacey, you got other things on your mind. It's okay, right? I shouldn't take it personally. What's the big deal? I don't know if you saw, there was an email or something online about my talk, and it said, no self, no problem. There was a Burmese monk that had kind of made that little quip. But, it's true, right? If you don't get so personal about things, then you're not going to see it as such a big problem. So, I think that's one of, I struggled in meditation for a long time with trying to get enlightened, trying to get in the right space, trying to have my mind be quiet. It's not going to be quiet. Minds talk. That's what they do, But just to get awareness about, that thinking mind. So it slows down enough to notice even the space around it, the emptiness. All right, let's wrap this up a little bit here. Let me see if there's anything important that Sorry about this. I took a bunch of notes and didn't completely organize them into a comprehensive talk like I wanted to. If I'd had another week, it would have been a lot smoother. But here I am. This is it. This is the suchness, right? This is, this is the imperfect moment. It wouldn't have been perfect next week either, It's the suchness of, one of the things, I did a really long retreat, and I came out of that realizing what courage and faith it takes to be a human. This not knowing. You don't know what the next moment is. You think you do. I'm going to go to my car, and I'm going to go to Briarwood, and I need to buy something at the Apple store, But really, I don't know. Am I going to get, in an accident? Is my wife going to call me and give me something else to do? I got to go out and do. I don't know. Is my next step going to be a trip back to the chair? I don't know, right? You really don't know. So every step, every moment is an act of faith. And to step into that faith with now knowing it takes some courage. Most of the time we're kind of ignorant of all that, but it is kind of an amazing thing. All right. So, in the end, this is not like supposed to be some complicated metaphysical type lesson where you're going to get it if you think about it hard enough. But you can, use it to kind of bring some wisdom and insight to your life. This insight of not knowing, this insight of compassion about, yourself and the complexity of decisions and impermanence, right? And just step into all of that and work towards still, hey, I'm not enlightened. I'm still going to work towards kind of understanding these intuitive things and still study Buddhism and still read and think about it. So, I'll just share with you a couple things here that I thought were cool. Here is the Buddha talking about the interdependence of things. When there's this, then that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When there isn't this, that doesn't come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. So Buddha used this insight to understand how to end suffering. His question was not, does God exist? Is there an afterlife? Who am I essentially? Those were not his questions. His question was, there is suffering in life. How do I end suffering? And what he found was when I don't attach to anything, and when I realize that I have no essential self, I will no longer cling and crave and desire things or push things away out of negativity, and I will just be kind of in a peaceful state. I will still exist. I will have a self. I will still have things to do. I still have to feed my body. But all those things can be done in a very peaceful way without this attachment of like, gotta have it or don't want it. Yeah. All right. I'll stop there. So I'll take questions or comments. Thank you. All right.